This morning, the passage we're going to be looking at is 1 Kings 18, verses 16 through 46. It's probably a familiar story to many of you, the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. And to start off, I'd like to read that. So again, it's, if you're looking for it in your pew Bibles, it's 1 Kings 18, verse 16 through 46. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you troubler of Israel?" "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God." Then all the people said, "What you say is good." Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is in deep thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." And they came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and they did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. And when all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God! The Lord, he is God!" Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. Go and look toward the sea, he told his servant, and he went up and looked. There's nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, go back. The 7th time the servant reported, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. So Elijah said, go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you. Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, a heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. This is the word of the Lord. Who here is familiar with Lady Gaga? Right? If you watched the halftime of the Super Bowl recently, you saw that she was the performer there, and she put on quite a show. Well, Miss Gaga is a singer who has been popular in recent years and has come out with various songs. And she's also known for her unique styles of dress. I think one time she even wore a dress of meat. I think that's a waste of meat, but whatever she wants to do, I guess. Well, one of the many songs that she has released, one that is not as well known, is called The Fame. And some of the lyrics go like this. I can't help myself. I'm addicted to life of material. It's some kind of joke. I'm obsessively opposed to the typical. All we care about is runway models, Cadillacs, and liquor bottles. Give me something I want to be, retro glamour Hollywood. Yes, we live for the fame, doing it for the fame, because we want to live the lives of the rich and famous. Now, by quoting these words, I'm not telling you to go and listen to Lady Gaga on your way home. You can do that if you want. I mean, I've been known to listen to some Lady Gaga in my life, but that's not my point. My point here is these lyrics show the materialistic culture that we live in. You know, people want fame, they want money, they want to look like runway models, they want to be rich, they want to live the lifestyles of the rich. And sometimes this leads people to put their trust in certain things like money and jobs. And when we do this, when we put our trust in something other than God, we are making these things idols. The Heidelberg Catechism, which is one of the creeds and confessions that we hold to in the Christian Reformed Church, talks a little bit about idolatry in it. And in question and answer 95, it asks the question, what is idolatry? And the answer to this question is, idolatry is having or inventing something that we put our trust in alongside the one true God who has revealed himself in his word. And in our passage today, we see that the Israelites are putting their trust in something else. They've been placing their trust in Baal in place of or alongside of the Lord, of Yahweh. So at this point in Israel's history, Ahab is king. And if you were to read a little bit more in 1 Kings, you see that Ahab is a wicked king. And he also married a wicked woman named Jezebel, who was a Phoenician. And Ahab wasn't even supposed to do this because the Israelites were commanded by God not to marry other people from the nations around them. So Jezebel brought with her Baal worship. And Ahab set up these altars to Baal and Asherah throughout the entire land. And the people began to worship these idols. They began to worship Baal. They began to worship Asherah. Some of them worshiped these idols exclusively, and others may have worshipped Baal alongside of the Lord, alongside of Yahweh. But either way, the Israelites were putting their trust in something other than the one true God. So at the beginning of this passage today, we see that Ahab goes out to meet Elijah. And Ahab looks out and he sees Elijah and he remembers a time when they last met. A time where Elijah delivered Ahab a message from God that said there will be no rain or dew for the next few years except on my word. Now, Ahab believes it's Elijah's fault that all of Israel is in this drought. He might believe that Elijah angered Baal, because Baal was supposed to be the storm god who brought rain on the land. So Ahab says to Elijah, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" And Elijah answers him saying, "I have not made trouble for Israel, but it's you and your father's family. You have abandoned the Lord's commandments and have set up these altars to Baal and Asherah." See, Ahab and his family completely disobeyed God, and they completely disobeyed the commandment that you shall have no other gods before me. They brought Baal worship into the land and were acting like all the other nations around them instead of the set-apart, chosen people that they were supposed to be. So it was Ahab, not Elijah, that was the troubler of Israel. And since Ahab and Israel are putting their trust in Baal and Asherah instead of the one true God, Elijah wants to show them who the one true God is. So he comes up with a contest, and he says to Ahab, "Ahab, tell all the people of Israel to make their way up Mount Carmel, and summon the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah as well." See, Mount Carmel is where this contest would happen, and it should be pointed out here that Mount Carmel likely held significance both for Baal worshipers and for those who worshiped Yahweh. See, this mountain was right between Israel and Phoenicia, and it was likely, the Phoenicians likely thought it was a sacred dwelling place for Baal. So Ahab probably thought, okay, this works. This is Baal's home turf. I have the advantage here, so let's do it. So the people made their way up to the mountain, and Elijah stood before them, and he says to them, "People of Israel, just how long will you waver between two deities? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." Elijah is saying to them, how long will you continue to dance around and worship Baal while still prophesying Yahweh? The people are not worshiping God exclusively as God has called them to do. Rather, they're worshiping idols and putting their trust in something other than this one true God. I think there are times in our lives today where we might waver between two deities. We might make idols for ourselves that are not that unlike the idols that the Israelites have. Remember, the Heidelberg Catechism question and answer 95 says that idolatry is having or inventing something in which one trusts in place of or alongside of the one true God who has revealed himself in his word. So what might we put our trust in place of God? What might we put before God? Well, I came across recently this hypothetical but relatable story. Imagine a typical day for a 20-something Christian, and what we'll call her Sue. Each morning, Sue wakes up from a deep sleep to her alarm on her iPhone, and she hits the snooze button, and as she groggily looks at her screen and checks her notifications and emails, her head crashes back down to the pillow so she can get a few more minutes of sleep. Then her alarm goes off again, and she quickly utters this 1-minute prayer to cover all the bases. Thank you, bless this, ask for that, amen. And then gets up and rushes to feel the nice warmth of the shower. Now at 8:30, she rushes through the door, not before grabbing a granola bar for her breakfast, and after a few attempts to get her car started, she makes her way off to work. By 9 o'clock, she's clocked in to her work, and she's praying for the weekend to come sooner. At lunchtime, she meets with her friends, and while scarfing down a burger, she's checking Facebook and Twitter on her phone to keep up with all the news and everything that's going on. And from then until her head hits the pillow at night, she's doing a lot of different things: dishes, vacuuming, picking up groceries, eating dinner, checking Facebook and Twitter again as to not be left out of the loop. And then she goes to bed at midnight, often neglecting her devotions. Then her alarm goes off the next morning, and she does the whole thing over again. See, for Sue, God has taken a back seat. It could be said that this U.S. culture has become an idol for her. She has to go to work to make money, to buy things. She is also consumed not being left out of the loop. She is so busy that she is neglecting to rely on God. She might even be making an idol of herself by trusting in herself to accomplish everything that she has to do rather than asking God for help. Many of us might fit right along with Sue. Others of us might put our trust in other things such as money or our jobs or our kids or our spouses or the government or ourselves, just in whatever we put our trust in. But you might lose your job. You might lose your money. You might end up having a conflicted relationship with your family members. If you put your trust in your job and money and lose it, where does that leave you? It leaves you with nothing. If you put your trust in an idol, in anything other than the one true God, you have the potential to be let down. Now, I think we all have the tendency to fall into this sin, to put God on the back burner, to push him to the back seat, and focus on other things in our lives. Well, in this contest between Elijah and the prophets of Baal, God shows the Israelites that he is the one true God and that he provides for them. So we enter the story again with Elijah standing before the people of Israel. And he says to them, "Look, I am the only one of God's prophets left. And Baal has 450 of them. So let's do this. Get 2 bulls. I'll let the prophets of Baal choose the one they think is better. And let them cut the bull up and place it on the wood altar. Then you, Israel, cry out to your God, and I will call in the name of the Lord. And whoever answers by fire is the one true God." See, here Elijah is giving every advantage to the prophets of Baal. They're on Mount Carmel. They're on Baal's home turf. He lets the prophets of Baal pick out the bull that they think is better. And he's also one prophet going up against 450 of them. And on top of all of this, Baal was the storm god, and he was said to bring fire from the sky in the form of lightning. So it shouldn't be too hard for Baal to set this altar on fire, right? All of these things seem to be in the prophets of Baal favor, but the story goes on. So the prophets of Baal, they construct this altar by piling up the stones. They take the bull, they cut it up into pieces and put it on the altar. And after they've done this, they start calling out to Baal. "Baal, answer us," they say. And the prophets, they keep shouting from morning until noon, "Baal, answer us! Baal, answer us!" However, as we see in the passage, the narrator tells us there's no response. No one answered. Notice he doesn't say that Baal didn't respond, that Baal didn't answer. He says there was no response, pointing to the fact that Baal does not even exist. So the prophets at this point decide to start dancing around the altar. And they're dancing around the altar and trying their absolute hardest to get Baal to answer them, crying out, "Baal, answer us! Baal, answer us!" And Elijah's sitting back and he's watching all this, and he decides to start taunting them. And he says, "Hey, prophets, cry out louder. He is a god. Maybe he's in deep thought. Or he could be busy, or he could be on a trip. Or he might be tired. He might be taking a nap. So cry out louder to wake him up." See, Elijah's comments here, they're meant to taunt the prophets of Baal, but the prophets of Baal might have believed some of the things that he was saying. Because some of the mythological stories about Baal include him journeying to places and being imprisoned in the underworld. So the prophets of Baal might have believed some of the things that Elijah was saying here. Well, as all this is going on, The prophets of Baal get even louder and crazier, and they began slashing their bodies with swords and spears until they're bleeding rather profusely. I mean, it's pretty vulgar. It's a thing, but it wasn't uncommon in pagan worship at that time. Meanwhile, as this is going on, Elijah is preparing his altar. And it's finally Elijah's turn, and he calls the people over to him. And the people are watching him build this altar, and Elijah's piling up 12 stones, which represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And it reminds the people of the covenant that God made with them. The covenant that the Israelites are his people and that they are to be blessed. Elijah uses these stones to repair the broken down altar to Yahweh. He builds it in the name of Yahweh, not Baal, not Asherah, but Yahweh, the Lord. He stacks the wood up on the altar, and he cuts the bull into pieces and puts the meat up on the altar as well. And then what he does next is very surprising. Surprising to the reader and surprising to the Israelites standing around the altar. Elijah digs a trench around the altar, and he tells the people, fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the altar. So they fill 4 jars and pour it on the altar. And then amazingly, Elijah tells them to do it again, and then also a third time, until multiple gallons of water were being poured on the altar, and the trench was filling up, and streams of water were pouring down the altar. Now, as any of us know here, water and fire don't mix at all. So the people watching this are probably like, man, what has this guy been smoking? There's no way this altar can start on fire, being as soaked as it is. What is he doing? Well, after this has been done, Elijah walks up to the soaked altar and he prays. And he says, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant. Answer me, Lord, so that these people will know that you are God and that you are turning their hearts back again. Again, Elijah's prayer points to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, as well as the promises that God made with them and with the Israelites. And it also points to the fact that God will bring the Israelites' hearts back to him. Well, after Elijah's prayer is done, instantly fire comes from heaven and consumes the altar. It doesn't just start the altar on fire, but consumes everything, including the water. Not a thing was left. And when the Israelites saw this amazing sight, they fell face down on the ground and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" Then Elijah commanded the people to capture the prophets of Baal. Now to end this story, Elijah tells Ahab to go back home because it's going to rain. And he goes up to the top of the mountain, and he sends his servant to go out and look over the sea. And the servant comes back the first time and says there's nothing there. But Elijah sends his servant back 7 times. And on the 7th time, the servant reports that there's a cloud the size of a hand, the size of a fist, rising up out of the sea. So he tells the servant to go home, and Elijah tucks his cloak into his belt, and he runs as the rain starts to pour. The rain that only the true God can provide, the rain that no one else could provide. Today, God shows us that He is the one true God and that He provides for us. I recently heard a story about Barb and Bob, not their real names. See, Bob was an executive for 10 years at a company, and then after 10 years, the company closed. See, Bob's a very educated man with a strong background in business, and he held executive level positions for years. So it seemed like Bob would be able to get a job real quick. And he searched diligently in the area, and as they were living off his 1-year severance pay. Then lots of time went by. 6 months and 9 months went by, and Bob was still jobless. And as this time went by, Bob and Barb felt more anxiety about the future. Bob would go to various interviews, but no one offered him a job. We were quite frankly stunned, Barb said. And there were more interviews, including a first interview, a second interview, a third interview, but still no job. The second summer of his unemployment came, and we were literally at the end of our funds, lamented Barb. We didn't know where to turn. We felt like we had nothing left. I mean, we had no money, no job, and hardly any food. However, Barb would go on to say, during this trial and time of stress, both my husband and I grew closer and closer to God, putting our trust in Him. We prayed diligently, sometimes desperately, and sought God's presence, and God provided in so many ways. God provided a scholarship for their son, and when they thought that they had to owe taxes to the government, they actually got a large refund. Every time a need arose for Bob and Barb, they prayed and put their trust in God. And one day, out of the blue, Bob's recruiter called him after months of silence and said that he had an interview for him. And this interview was 6 miles from his house. Bob went in on a Tuesday, was offered the job on Wednesday morning, and he began work on Thursday. See, Bob and Barb felt like they had nothing left when Bob lost his job and they had no money. They had become too focused on this job, on the money, and they neglected to ask God for help. They neglected to trust Him. They neglected to put their faith in Him. See, the job let them down. The money let them down. But God did not let them down. And they realized that He is God, that He is the one true God, and they put their trust back in Him. Today, God shows us that He is the one true God. I think we put our trust at times in many different things, but when we put our trust in money, we have the potential to be let down. When we put our trust in our jobs, we have the potential to be let down. When we put our trust in the government, we have the potential to be let down. Every earthly thing that we put our trust in has the potential to let us down. But God, the one true God, does not let us down. Again, Heidelberg Catechism question and answer 95 says, idolatry is having or inventing something that we put our trust in place of or alongside of the one true God who has revealed Himself in His Word. So, what do you put your trust in? Have you placed God on the back burner? Have you placed Him in the back seat and are focusing on something else? Do you put your trust in yourself? Do you put your trust in money? Do you put your trust in anything other than the one true God? The one true God who sent His Son to earth to suffer and die on the cross for our sins so that we may have eternal life. That is something that absolutely nothing else can give us. So again, as I've been asking this entire time, what do we put our trust in? Do we put our trust in God? Do we really rely on Him? Do we really put our complete trust in Him? Or are we trusting in something else right now? God has shown us that He is worthy of our trust, that He is the one that won't let us down. And when it comes down to it, all that's left for us to do is to fall to the floor. And just like the Israelites said, the Lord, He is God.